Yes. Hello, and nice to be here in Berlin on the stage. It's quite an honor to give a short talk today about GenAI to you all here. And actually, when we started and thinking about what we are going to tell you today, we just grabbed some numbers in the web in order to start these presentations. And as you know, don't trust any number you didn't figure out by your own. So we found out that 92% of the top 500 companies are already using GenAI, but you all know that. What did they do? They started a company GPT, some questions in and out. They bought a solution which covers some were bought in some GenAI topics, or maybe they just bought a ChatGPT license and gave an access to their employees. So basically, we really just scratched the surface. It's not a deep involvement into the most of the companies and customers we see. So second part is a lot of companies are facing labor shortages. We just heard they didn't even get an application for a Fachinformatiker. Some of them are facing demographic challenges. And what we see is large automation programs are setting up the stage. They all try to reach up like 20 to 30% of efficiency gains through AI. My personal perspective of this is truly necessary because we will lose a lot of our workforce in the next upcoming years, but the 20 to 30%, that might be too unambitious. We have to focus more on this and get it done. So coming to the most topic of our speech today, already 2 million software engineers are leveraging GitHub Copilot. This is like a built-in-the-box software. You just adopt it, you buy it, you use it. And then you have to train your developers. But basically, software development is not just about coding. Coding is 1/3 of the whole process. And everyone who ever heard at university something about software engineering, you will learn that when you do the stuff right in the beginning, you will have way better software at the end. But a lot of the people are focusing just on this coding part and get my developers better. And let's deep dive into why, and we think it is important to start at the very beginning with this. So we believe software engineering is in transition, and maybe you haven't heard of adesso before. We still encounter some people who didn't. Actually, adesso is the biggest service provider in the German market with a headquarter in Germany. We have around 8,500 people in Germany, and altogether it's 11,000. Out of them, close to the half are really developers, so we quite know how to develop software and are doing this in our day-to-day projects. The PSC radar just recently announced us as best in class in AI-related services in Germany. Lünendonk announced us as a market leader with portfolio depth and market relevance. We believe what we bring to the table is a strong partner network with AI technologies, and we know how to embed it. And this is why we think we can give you an idea on what we see developing in software engineering. So first, I said we have to look at the whole process. And still, I know we had the ways of agilization and stuff like this, but still, software engineering is a phased process. We have requirements engineering at the very beginning. It's now a user story to write, not a big concept and stuff, but we have to go through it. Then we do a draft, we do like a mock-up or so. Then we do the implementation, we do the testing, and we deploy the software. It's more in cycles, but it's still the same process. And where can you leverage now GenAI in this process? And Tim is going to give you some impressive results in projects we have actually been seeing, not from some numbers in the web, but actually real experience. So first of all, with the requirements engineering, we see a lot of the business, they struggle in writing good user stories. They don't have the experience, they don't have the capacities. This is where you can set in, because generating really good requirements is something you can do very easily when you are less experienced in doing it. So we set it up and we bought like a small fine-tuning model which actually precisely puts out the requirements in a specific form and you get way better quality in user stories. And like I said at the very beginning, the better you do in the beginning, the better you end up at the end. So recognizing implications is something we found out, by the way, that GenAI is very good at. So when you write hundreds of requirements, typically they contradict each other. And it's very easy to see, read them, give me the contradictions, and you get them, and you can do this even before the coding was done, and you get the problems later in the process when you do the testing. So it's very important to really start at the very early stage here. In the second part, the draft phase, we develop our architectural models, basically still on the white paper, right? You start in every project new from scratch, but this has to stop because it's very, very cost intensive. So you have, like, you go with an enterprise architecture or whatever, you set up basic models, you have your patterns in place, and you can bring them to an AI system, and then you start not from a white paper, you really start off in your patterns in a good way. And one of the most fascinating parts is you can really generate user interfaces within minutes, basically, and then you get into touch with the business again and say, hey, did you really mean it like this or this? And this is really something which jumps from days to minutes or hours in developing mock-ups, touchable user interfaces, and so on. And to my personal opinion, one of the most important points is the concept validation. When we talk about software engineering in the whole process, it's a complex process phase where everyone has their own perception of the process and an idea on how it will look like later. Maybe some of you have seen this picture you see at university. This is how the customer explained it, this is how the developer built it, this is how everyone wanted it to be, and this is the real solution. And you really now get the chance to have a visualization in minutes or hours, and everyone gets the same concept of the solution. That's very, very important. That part is, to my opinion, the most perceived one. You have code generation, optimization, error detection. It's all on static path still. The dynamic tests and dynamic programming path is still coming up and more complex. But this really helps. And we get actually the same numbers, like you most probably have heard Andreas Nauertz from Bosch yesterday. We also achieve like around 20%. So that's quite something you can do. And the translation part, if you have anything to do with multiple language, that problem is solved. You don't need to waste any time on this anymore. You can just do it. Testing, and we'll have a quite impressive study from our own here. That's also something, it's at the core of every escalating IT software project I have come across. So you see, testing is very important, you all know that, but still, how do I test? How do I write a good test case? How do I generate my test data in accordance to the business rules, etc., etc.? Big, big problem in every project, also very cost intensive. And here is the good news. Also something like at the very beginning, when you invest here, you get good test data and you can really control it in a better way. Tim will give you a real-life example quite soon. So fair deployment is something where you don't have too much benefit in the AI path. You get a better documentation, you can generate it. Yeah, that's for sure. But having talked enough about the possibilities, I think now it's time for Tim to give you some ideas from the real-life examples and also what we did at adesso in our GenAI program. Tim.
Thank you, Benedikt. Well, when software as a service started, it needed 4 years to become 2% of the market. This was in the 2010s and so forth. Now with generative AI, in less than 1 year, we see that the market has been 30 to 40% brought through with generative AI. As we started out, 92% of Fortune 500 companies are already using generative AI. So we as ourselves thought to ourselves, okay, we really need to hit the ground running here. Because we are a tech-savvy company and we have tech-savvy people, and the first thing they are doing is they just get these tools. They just get what they think they need for their work, and they start using it completely uncontrolled. And the problem here is that we work with sensible software, sensible technology. So the first thing that we needed to do was to make sure that every tool that we are using is actually applicable and applicable for the use cases and for the security standards of our customers. So we had a centralized procurement that we brought in place to roll out generative AI tools across the whole board of people that we have, from consultants to software engineers. And of course, this included stuff like GitHub Copilot and also the Microsoft 365 Copilot for the everyday office work. But we also needed to have a solution for some of the more specific, more regulated industries that adesso is working in. And that we did with our own adesso GPT, which is a secure tool running in an on-premise system where our staff can use this tool like they would use ChatGPT and co. with the same models in place, but securely and with even the more critical data and code that our customers provide. We also founded a software testing and software development task force, our LLM task force, and their task is basically to continuously assess tools that are applicable for software engineering in general. Because we saw that we cannot stop with GitHub Copilot. New solutions and also new and better models are emerging every day, every week, basically. So what we needed to do is to continually assess that and then also do a switch or give out another suggestion to our software engineers and consultants on what to use and when. And of course, not everyone is that tech savvy. Not everyone is doing the switch immediately. And also people have questions. Can I use that? How do I use that? Is that even something that I can do in my regulated industries? So we provided trainings to all our staff, all our employees, to be able to assess the situation, work with generative AI, also know about the shortcomings this technology has today, and be really able to swiftly adopt the technology.
So let me emphasize on this. Yeah. Don't ever underestimate the training and the change of
Absolutely.
adoption in AI. It's going to be one of the hardest paths you have to tackle.
Absolutely. And with that in place, we saw the adoption. Actually, over 80% of our software developers are using generative AI tools in adesso. Why not everyone? Well, there are some industries where you simply cannot use these tools, where the customer prohibited us from using these tools. So it's still some air on top, but 80% is really good. And as you can see here, they are using different tools. Of course, as I said, our adesso GPT and GitHub Copilot are at the forefront, but also Claude 3.5 Sonnet with artifacts, tools like Cursor, and the local variant with CodeLlama and Alum Studio are used by our developers. And what we saw is a 20% increase in sprint velocity. So you can measure how many story points are burned down in a certain sprint, and the same teams did 20% more story points by using generative AI, and not only using it for software engineering, but for the whole process of refinement, of coding, of testing, and so forth, as Benedikt just told you. And now I want to show you a couple of examples that we did for our own and with our customers, where we gathered some insights. One of the most mind-blowing projects that we had in the last 2 years was a migration project we did for a large insurance company here in Germany. They estimated that to migrate their core insurance software, they would need 12,000 person days. And we could cut the cost for this project by 60% by using generative AI. How did we do that? Well, the most driving parts of this were the data model and the business logic, because prior they had a system that they built on their own, they maintained for a very long time. So they needed to look at, okay, where are the parts that really need migration? How do you wire up the data model to the new tool? How do you migrate the data in the end? And this is all stuff that can be assessed by generative AI and then transformed from left to right completely automatically using generative AI. Of course, we had to do some quality assurance, but 60% in savings at this part is really something that also blew us how this came by.
And then within data migration, right? AI is basically software which learns from data. So it makes perfectly sense that in data migration, you actually have the best chance to leverage AI and to learn from that. So we're really leveraging that in basically every data migration project we have right now.
The next thing we as adesso provide is testing as a service. So the idea is very simple. You give us a software that you want to be tested, and we design, execute, and document the test cases on the software. And then you pay in parts for that. And the problem here is that we haven't written the software that we are testing as a service. So it's completely new, and this makes it, of course, more complex to actually be able to test and write the right test cases. So generative AI here also help to assess the software that we need to test, even some hard legacy code that we need to look at, and then, of course, design and write test cases and be able to provide test data and all the such which Benedikt already told you. And what that means is that we can now have 30% in cost savings in unit tests, integration tests, and test data generation just by using generative AI. The next step is that we want to change our testing suite, because we saw that not only software testing or classical programmed software needs to be tested, but of course also AI systems and generative AI. And some of the question that we hear in most generative AI projects is, how do we make sure that the quality is right? How do we actually measure a certain certainty that a generative AI, especially large language model, has? How do we measure accuracy and so forth? And we are currently extending our testing as a service suite with the new emerging tools and technologies to test also generative AI to be able to provide that to you. And last but not least, and Benedikt already told that, we are seeing a reduction in user experience design and prototyping from 3 days to roughly 3 hours. And this means with the significant decrease in time, we can have a significant increase in design iterations that we can do before a project is actually going to be programmed, which means we get earlier customer feedback, we have reduced change requests in the end, and we have better refined user stories, which are then easier to be translated into software. And all of this is preventing faults, errors, change requests, and so forth. And we measured, again, our sprint velocity and saw a reduce in refinement by 3 hours per sprint per software developer, which is actually huge if you think about how much time a software engineering team needs to spend to refine user stories usually. So Benedikt, our key takeaways from the session is that our new colleague, generative AI, gets better by the minute. Even though the technology might not be completely perfect right now, we see an increase in the skills and in the accuracy of generative AI with every new generation. And every new generation is about half a year, even less in some cases. So if you don't look at this technology right now and see how you can leverage in software engineering, you're definitely going to miss out in the future. So the first key takeaway is speed is crucial. Use what is there now create the framework and condition that you need to implement that deeply into your software engineering process. And let's take it a think further than just in programming. Think about the whole software engineering process. Think about all the applications around the actual work of a software engineer, and you will see that there is even more efficiency to leverage.
And if you listen to Ralf Wintergest in the opening keynote from yesterday, I think thinking is the one part, but if you go home with all these ideas from all the presentations, I think we have to do something and really get into traction and be mutig about it.
Brave, be brave about it.
Be brave, yeah.
Or you come to us and join our workshop at 11:15, where we would take a look into some of the tools for actual programming and software engineering and have some hands-on experience on how good they are today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.